Merci Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you, President. Commissioner.
1
minute to midnight, and Europe stands poised on the brink. After decades of peace, the return of war to our continent and imperialistic logic throughout the world is a reminder. Power has never disappeared. We've simply stopped looking it in the face. The war of aggression carried out by Russia, coupled with the election to the presidency of Donald Trump, have highlighted our failures, but also your naivety when it comes to defense. This is no pretext, may I state, to creating an EU army. An army is the expression of national sovereignty, the condition for its survival, the heir to its sacrifice. An EU army would mean the watering down of France's sovereignty in a federalist project which our people reject. The emergency is elsewhere. It's about us being able to produce what will guarantee today and tomorrow our security. Our safety. Europe must set up a European preference when it comes to defense. A nation that is not in charge of its weapons is at the mercy of that which produces its weapons. This is about defending a new European architecture. It's about the EU placing at the heart of its priority national sovereignty, far from the weighty red tape of the Commission that is trying to take on a competence that does not belong to it. We need to change the way that we're doing things, change the track that we're on in order to take our destiny in hand. And so some major choices have to be made and defended together today and tomorrow.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Statsis. For 1 minute, please.
Dear colleagues, I once sat next to the wealthy American who taught me about the new concept, FU money. It's not about riches, it's about ability to sometimes say no, to walk away from your dead-end job and control your own future. And right now, Europe does not have that kind of privilege. Around 80,000 US troops are stationed here, forming a pan-European security force. We are grateful for this. It really strengthens European as well as American security. But what if one day they leave and Europe has no real answer? That isn't strategic autonomy, that isn't strategy at all. That's why Europe needs what I call FU defense. The ability to stand on its own. This starts with being able to build our own European rapid reaction force, around 100,000 troops, fully aligned with NATO. Not because we want to stand alone, but because we must be ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Botenga for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner, colleagues. In 10 years, military spending in Europe has exploded, doubled. You're talking about 7 trillion euros for the war. But with a budget above that of Russia and virtually every other country, we cannot defend ourselves. Are we completely incompetent? If the money is to defend ourselves, why are we buying armed vehicles designed for the Sahara? In 2025, Rheinmetall guaranteed over 700 billion euros to its shareholders. Now, why is our taxpayers' money financing the shareholders of these firms? The US is turning over on over-invoicing for particular items. That's a real problem. You're here to deal with this, not to profit shareholders of companies.
The speaker is Mr. Neuhoff for 2 minutes, please.
Colleagues, a common security and defence policy in the EU There's never been such a thing. When the Ukraine war, when we talked about, when it became serious with defence, it wasn't the EU that acted, it was a coalition of the willing. A handful of EU states with some non-EU states. And that's no coincidence. A true common defence policy was never necessary because all relied on NATO. And there was a good reason. Only NATO has, because of the US, the necessary military assets to provide real deterrence. So, how could a strengthening of the EU defence in a more unstable international environment, with more powers for the EU, by even more concentration of power and regulation from Brussels? If you're serious about the defence of Europe, this won't be done by the EU. What we need is the opposite, a clear institutional division between European Union and European defence. What we need is our own independent body, an alliance of states that are prepared to deliver, to bring their capabilities together, and which will strengthen NATO as a European pillar. But if the EU, when it comes to protecting its external borders, when it's failed so miserably, shouldn't look to the much bigger task of military defence. Colleagues, every change starts with thinking. If you want to rethink Europe, you must have the courage to open the European treaties and renegotiate them. Yes, the Title 5 of the TEU is one of the things that we need to be taking a close look at.
Thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Commissioner. The security of Europe must be based on strong armed forces of sovereign nations and not the European Commission taking away yet more competencies. The issue of defence cannot be the subject matter of experiments such as a common European army. The main element of the security is cooperation of most EU member states in NATO structures. There is no need to duplicate the role and competencies of the pact. The more decisions stay in the hands of the European Commission, the more trouble the European member states have. The European Commission must stop instrumentally uses security for exerting political pressure. Funds for defence cannot be blocked for ideological or political reasons, and this is what happened vis-à-vis the Hungarian government to impact the parliamentary elections that are approaching. This is acting to the detriment of Europe. All the governments should meet the planned commitment of 5% of GDP for defence.
Okay, thank you. We will continue with the speakers. List. The next speaker is Mr. Dworczyk for 1 minute, please.
Madam Chair, Mr. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, I'll start with the obvious. Unfortunately, some European politicians want to replace by illusions. European security and safety is based on independent armies and the NATO. Until 2022, this was the description of reality. Today, however, some are worried about it, and this is a pretext not to protect Europe. Why? Because in Brussels, more and more people talk about a European army. This is satisfactory to federalists and some EU civil servants. From the perspective of the eastern flank member states, it is something very dangerous due to duplication of structures with NATO and undermining security structures, which is crucial for countries of my region. Presenting an EU army is a side topic, replacing the obvious one for people who do not want to take responsibility for security. Today, we need to fulfill the requirements within NATO and build capacities where they are most needed on the eastern flank, and not come up with political solutions that only seem to come up with a solution. A blue card? No.
Keep dreaming, Mark Rutte said. If you think Europe can ever defend itself without the US, keep dreaming. Sure, we were asleep for too long, but this vision leads nowhere. Centuries ago, the Netherlands was 7 little provinces, surrounded by threats, too weak to stand against them, dependent on protection from unreliable allies. And these 7 provinces united and created the Dutch army. What if they hadn't? Because Dutch army sounded scary, or because people without a vision told leaders, keep dreaming. If they had listened, the Netherlands would not be here today. Colleagues, I don't give a how we call it. A European army, a European defence union, the European soldier sorority for all I care, as long as we get it done. We need autonomous defence with European command, capabilities and forces. This is not a dream, it's a plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Grasoulis for 1.5 minutes, please.
The chairman has urged, let us wake up the sleeping giant of Europe. The EU member states have promised by 2030 to allocate at least 5% to defence from their budgets. But according to the data of 2025, 5 EU member states, the small ones, hadn't allocated even 0.5%. 11 EU member states allocated around 2% for defence. And only 5 countries, including Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Greece, allocated more than 5% of their GDP to defence. It is highly difficult to wake up a giant, but it is a giant. And if one country allocated even all of its budget, no matter how small it is, that wouldn't tackle the problem of defence. Europe needs solidarity, and it lacks solidarity. If we looked at war in Ukraine now, we are blaming US for doing little, but Europe is doing even less. Look at Trump. He urges India not to buy Russian oil, while we are signing the free trade agreement with India without even raising this obligation to renounce Russian oil. Let us be united and principled. Thank you.
For 1 minute, please.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Jacques Delors said Europe is going to be social or nothing. With the gigantic arms race for 800 billion euros, von der Leyen is sounding the death knell for social Europe. The Commission is sticking to NATO, but NATO is nothing other than a US instrument of power. It's just about US interests. Greenland showed us what this means. The Commission cannot deny reality here with Greenland. Ms. Kallas and von der Leyen are talking about international law, but they don't care about anything else. But what about the blockade of Cuba, which is destroying the economy and leading to regime change? Nothing, not a peep from the European Commission, which is shameful. Make sure that the Cuban people, make sure they don't starve at the hands of Donald Trump. Thank you.